The World Bank has raised its forecast for China's economic growth in 2024 and 2025 on December the 26th of 2024, but cautioned against challenges such as household and business confidence and headwinds in the property sector. China has emphasized the need to maintain steady economic growth, keep employment and prices generally stable, ensure basic equilibrium in the balance of payments, and increase residents' income in step with economic growth. What obstacles and challenges can we expect in the new year? Where is China's economy headed? I was pleased to be joined in the studio by Carl Fey, Professor of Strategy at BI Norwegian Business School in Oslo, Norway. Why does China not use a different term, like, innovation simply, or scientific and technological development? Why do we have to use the new quality productive forces? From your perspective, how do you understand the importance of coming up with the right name for it? A name probably is ahead of the time.
I think there are a couple of things. One is that this is a way that President Xi can signal this is an important area of activity that more and more things are going to be fit into. A second thing is to signal that it is new, and it was new and bold. If he said focus on innovation, well, some people say, well, innovation's been around forever, but this sort of signals it's a change that's needed. It's something new that's needed. But indeed, it does have the drawback that most people, even in China, are still trying to figure out exactly what it is. The third thing is that, China does need to increase productivity. And there are different ways to do that. Using AI, for example, is one of these. But one of the key things is through being more innovative.
How is that going to impact people and businesses and industries in other countries, for instance, in America? For someone who is watching this from America, how is China spearing ahead with the new productive force, potentially harming them or benefiting them, or they won't be affected?
Yeah, so it is going to make an effect. It's a little scary because traditionally, people outside of China used to say, oh, China, they can sort of produce things cheaply. But actually...
T-shirts, socks.
Yeah, but they don't do sort of complicated things, and they don't do R&D. And that's obviously changing a lot now. We see, for example, the foresight that the Chinese government and Chinese companies have to become leaders in the EV industry, in the solar energy industry, in the wind industry, in batteries, et cetera. This didn't happen by accident. This happened step by step. And this is important for the whole world. It's good for the whole world that China did this because we need to make this green transition, which innovation is a critical thing for. So some people say, geez, it's horrible that all of these, Chinese companies are coming to do things. Well, imagine, we were having this discussion 10 years ago. Probably, if we thought that, if you asked me, could there be a company in 10 years that's sort of producing and making money selling electric vehicles, and that, even countries like Norway, where I'm from, are outlawing from January 1st sales of gas vehicles? Probably I would say it's not possible, and probably everyone would say that. We should be thankful for China that they had the foresight to move forward on this. But it's a little scary. It's a little scary that, moving into activity that has traditionally been held by others. And I should say, I do think it's good to have some competition. Competition that having American car companies, Japanese car companies, German car companies, and Chinese car companies all innovating will push all of them forward. But the final thing I want to point out here is that different countries are better at doing different things. The famous Harvard professor Michael Porter has suggested this, that there is not a best industry, a best technology to focus on. It depends on the sort of natural environment that you have. And so I think it's really important to see, a country moving forward on things as an opportunity to collaborate and for different countries to specialize. And unfortunately, this is getting lost in most of the rhetoric we see these days.
I was going to say, aren't you getting a little bit idealistic? Because if you look at the reaction from, for instance, the European Union, from North America about new high quality productive forces or products from China, the first response is fear. The first response is they fear that China has unfairly subsidized these enterprises, putting international competitors at a disadvantaged position. What is your understanding on that? And secondly, Norway has not followed the EU suit in terms of putting tariffs. Why is Norway not following the steps?
So to take the second thing first, which is easier, Norway normally is not part of the EU, but normally follows all EU rules, has not followed the EU in adding additional tariffs now. And that's because they want to make this green transition as fast as possible. Norway is already the country in the world that has the highest penetration of EVs. And that's because of important government policies that have stimulated that, like cheap...
Sorry, do they have their local EV industry? Are these cars locally
I mean, there's
built?
been some very small, minor things many years ago, but essentially it's importing. Norway is very strong in many other green industries, but not in EVs. But Chinese companies are finding Norway to be a great location to test the European market and understand European customers better. Why have they not put the higher tariffs? Simply because they want more EVs to come in and want it to be more affordable for consumers to buy it. Just like they stimulate by having parking fees cheaper if you have an EV. Road tolls, of which there are many tolls on roads in Norway, be cheaper. Special lanes that you can travel in, although this is decreasing some as well. So Norway has not followed it because they want to facilitate a green transition. Now, let's see, your first question.
For the countries that have a traditional car industry, for instance, they probably have much more to worry about.
They have much more to worry about in the short term. But in the long term, competition pushes all of us forward. You know, there is a reason that so many high-tech companies from outside the US open subsidiaries in Silicon Valley in the US around San Francisco. That's because they want to sense what's going on. They want to learn. They want to be part of this. You do not benefit from isolation. Generally, you benefit from engagement. Short term, there can be some pain, but this pushes all of us forward. And by the way, if I get sick, my family doesn't care if that medicine that saves me is developed by China, is developed by the US, or is developed by Norway. They care that I get saved. And the point is that because different countries are more effective specializing in something else, it pushes the whole world forward more when you do specialize in what you're best at doing. The only thing here is that, remember, I did say competition is important. So I do think it's important not to get too dominant, such that there's only one company or one country that is dominating everything. So I do think it's wise for China to exercise some restraint, to have some competition so that there's dynamism in the market.
Yeah, that's why China is negotiating with the European Union in terms of price restriction, voluntary price restriction, for instance. Let's see what comes out of that. But you seem to be definitely open-minded about products from China. There are people who are fearing, for instance, connected vehicles. We're veering off our central topic, but their connected vehicles are not safe. You know, that your data can be stolen, that your, you know, the quality of the car, the safety standards may not be up to par and stuff like that. But it seems that you and the people, the authorities in Norway, don't seem to have that particular concern.
So I do think that, you know, there are certain industries that are reasonable to restrict to a particular country that are of high national security. The problem is now, you know, many countries, especially the US, are using this term for almost anything. And so it sort of degrades the value of the term to that it doesn't mean anything. Also, it's true historically that China did have a problem in product quality if we go back in time. And this is one of the biggest challenges that Chinese companies have today, to persuade foreign consumers that they have really moved up on the quality curve. But I think in most cases, not all cases, but in, let's say, many cases, they have. And I don't think it's a huge problem that there's a risk that my personal data is being taken if I'm driving a Chinese car in Norway. You know, you can do that basically only once. And then the company doesn't have much of a future.
True, absolutely. Their own credibility is on the line. Let's talk a little bit about your trip here, because you are actually talking with business executives, you're talking with local leaders, you're talking with even cadres in party school. You were at the central parties. What are you invited to share? What are they looking to learn from your expertise and experience?
So I was in Shanghai before coming to Beijing and doing some teaching at China Europe International Business School, probably the most sort of progressive place for training executives. And there I was talking about what management practices can help companies to be more innovative. And because everyone's hearing about innovation and new quality productive forces, people were really interested in it. In fact, one of the interesting things is I was actually teaching to the graduates over the last 20 years from their global EMBA program. And one of the things that excited me the most was that these people who were not working for a degree, but just trying to learn some new things, were really interested in learning more about innovation. So it shows that many Chinese people, at least the graduates from SIBS, are really buying into this lifelong learning, which I think is important. You can no longer get a university degree and sort of use that for the next 40 years.
Sure.
You need sort of bite-sized installments.
Yeah.
I was talking at the Central Party School here in Beijing, and that was a great honor to be able to do that. And some people
That's where the high-level cadres get their latest learning experiences without a diploma, but that's where they get up to date with the top minds from everywhere.
That's right. So both government leaders, but also business leaders from state-owned companies are studying there. And I think one of the things that is most misunderstood abroad, so for your foreign audience, is that there are many state-owned companies in China that are actually quite progressive, and many managers in those that are quite progressive as well. And so it's really important, and you do see that the Central Party School, while keeping some traditions and teaching a lot about communism and so forth as well, has a department of economics and many departments like we would see in a business school. And there I was also talking actually about drivers of innovation, and they were very interested to learn about this, in particular what was unique in China compared to other countries. They also, by the way, have a department focusing on learning about abroad. And so they were really interested not just to understand about China, but understand what's happening in Norway as well.
I was looking at the third quarter statistics, because for us, how to meet our annual growth target is a very big priority, especially for the cadres, for the state-owned enterprises. I was looking at the third quarter statistics. There are marginal upticking of some of the numbers, and this set of statistics really caught my attention. For instance, investment in high-tech industries grew by 10% year on year. Investment in high-tech manufacturing and high-tech services grew by 9.4%, 11.4% respectively. How do you look at this really heavy emphasis? Is China not just talking about a certain policy, they're actually doing the job?
So one of the really good things, there are pros and cons of any government system that you have. But one of the real good things about the Chinese system is there's some consistency. And basically, also, the Chinese government has sort of more levers they can pull than most governments. And so when the Chinese government sets out a plan, like the 5-year plan, you can be pretty confident that that's actually going to be achieved. Contrast that with the US, where I come from, and we can see with the recent election of Trump, all of a sudden a radical shift, which makes sort of planning a little more difficult. And quite honestly, and after the election of President Trump, there has been a major shift in lots of US policies. And this makes it difficult for companies to understand how they need to act and countries to understand how they need to act. Now, there are benefits too. The people have been able to sort of express their opinion, but it doesn't help for planning. And if we look at what Biden has had to deal with in the last years in the US, he's had a hard time getting a lot of his policies implemented because he's had a split Congress.